Imagine this. You're standing up for your rights in a tense moment, and the person you're dealing with is determined to push you past your limits. But then in the heat of the situation, one individual stands his ground and takes complete control. In today's video, we're diving into a powerful First Amendment audit that showcases what it truly means to stand firm in the face of authority. Watch as this auditee uses confidence, knowledge of the law, and an unshakable attitude to navigate a high-pressure encounter involving an ID refusal. It's a situation that could have easily escalated, but instead, he takes charge like a pro. The tension builds, but how will this all end? Stick around to find out how the situation unfolds and what happens next when the stakes are high. You won't want to miss this one. It all started when he noticed something off during a routine visit to a public building. Armed with just a camera and his understanding of the law, he was ready to exercise his First Amendment rights. The atmosphere was calm at first, but things quickly shifted when a staff member, clearly uncomfortable with being recorded, called for backup. Within moments, a figure of authority appeared, demanding answers. "Can I see some ID?" they asked, their tone firm but tense. It was a question loaded with power and expectation, but he wasn't rattled. Calmly he responded, "Am I being detained?" The room seemed to grow quieter, the air heavier with anticipation. The officer hesitated, clearly not expecting such a confident response. Around them, people watched closely, some curious, others uneasy. The tension rose as the officer took a step closer, his authority challenged. What happens next? You'll see it all unfold. The officer's pause was brief, but it said everything. He wasn't prepared for someone who knew their rights so well. "If you don't have anything to hide, why not just show your ID?" He pressed, his tone firm, but now slightly uncertain. The auditee, maintaining his calm demeanor, replied, "With all due respect, I'm in a public space, exercising my rights. Unless I've committed a crime, I'm not required to provide ID." The officer's radio crackled in the background, breaking the silence. A few passersby lingered nearby, some whispering, others pulling out their phones to record. The officer glanced around, realizing he was being watched. This wasn't just a routine interaction anymore, it was becoming a public spectacle. Meanwhile, the auditee stood firm, knowing any sign of weakness could shift the balance. Every word, every movement carried weight. The officer stepped back slightly, but his posture suggested he wasn't ready to back down just yet. The officer's expression hardened, a mix of authority and frustration. "Look," he said, his voice dropping lower. "We can make this simple, or we can take this further. You need to cooperate." The auditee didn't flinch. His stance remained firm, his voice steady. "I'm happy to cooperate within the bounds of the law. But unless you can tell me what crime I'm suspected of, I'm not required to hand over my ID." The silence that followed felt electric. The officer's hand hovered near his radio, as if contemplating his next move. A small crowd had now gathered, their murmurs growing louder. "Why's he asking for ID if the guy's done nothing wrong?" One voice questioned. Another added, "He's got guts standing up like that." The tension hit its peak when a second officer arrived, the air between them charged with authority. Would the auditee hold his ground, or would the situation spiral out of control? The second officer approached with a calm but authoritative demeanor, scanning the scene and quickly assessing the standoff. Unlike the first, this officer didn't immediately demand anything. Instead, he asked, "What's going on here?" The auditee, maintaining his composure, explained, "I'm documenting matters of public interest in a public space. I've committed no crime, and I've politely refused to show ID, which is my right." The second officer nodded, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to his colleague, quietly exchanging a few words. Their conversation was just out of earshot, adding another layer of mystery to the situation. Was the second officer about to de-escalate, or were they strategizing to push harder? Suddenly, the first officer raised his voice again, this time addressing the crowd. Everyone needs to step back for safety reasons. The subtle shift in tone made it clear. This wasn't over yet. The oddity stood firm, but the tension had just taken a sharp turn. As the officer's command echoed through the air, the crowd took a step back, their eyes locked on the unfolding situation. The oddity's stance remained unyielding. The second officer took a step forward, clearly assessing the pressure building in the scene. "All right," he said finally, "let's calm down. No one's being detained. This is just a misunderstanding." The first officer visibly relaxed, but only for a moment. There was still a lingering sense that things could go south at any second. The second officer turned back to the oddity, offering a small nod. "You're free to go, but just know, next time, don't make it so complicated." With a deep breath, the oddity nodded back, his heart still racing, but the victory was clear. He had stood his ground, used his knowledge of the law to its fullest, and had walked away without giving up his rights. But just as he began to turn to leave, the first officer's radio buzzed again, more urgent this time. A new voice came through, demanding immediate backup. As the oddity turned his back, the officers exchanged a quick glance, clearly not finished yet. But was it a threat or just a coincidence? Either way, the tension remained, hanging in the air as the oddity walked away, unscathed for now. As the oddity made his way toward the exit, the murmurs of the crowd slowly faded behind him. He had stood firm, confident in his rights, and it had paid off. The officers, though clearly frustrated, hadn't pushed further. The tension in the air loosened just enough to breathe, but the oddity knew this wasn't the end. His actions had sent a clear message. Knowing your rights is powerful, and standing up for them can make all the difference in moments like these. For those watching, it was a reminder of the importance of being informed about the law, especially when it comes to interactions with authority. Public spaces are for the public, and the right to record is protected. The oddity's calm and measured response had not only protected his rights, but it also encouraged others to question and challenge when necessary. As he walked away, he knew this was just one victory in a much bigger fight for accountability and freedom.